The storm outside was getting worse, and the ship was shaking like a toy in the hands of an angry child. And Sam Carter held onto his seat as the emergency lights turned everything red around him. "We are losing altitude," the pilot shouted over the noise of alarms and breaking metal. "Everyone prepare for impact." Sam was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life forms across the galaxy. And he had been on dozens of missions before, but he had never felt fear like this. Never felt his heart beat so fast that it hurt his chest. And he closed his eyes and thought about his mother back on Earth, about the last time he saw her smile. The Galactic survey ship Horizon hit the ground with a sound that Sam would never forget. A terrible crashing and tearing that threw him from his seat and sent him flying through the air. And then everything went black and silent. When he opened his eyes again, he did not know how much time had passed. And pain was everywhere in his body, in his arms and legs and head. And he could smell smoke and burning metal. And he could hear someone crying somewhere in the darkness. "Hello," he called out, his voice weak and broken. "Is anyone alive?" A voice answered him, rough and filled with pain, and it belonged to Corax, a Valkyrie crew member with blue skin and 4 arms, who was trapped under a piece of the ship's wall. Sam crawled toward the voice, his body screaming with every movement, and he found Corax and Hal pushed the metal away, and together they freed the alien from the wreckage. "The others," Corax said, looking around at the destroyed ship. "We need to find the others." They searched through the broken remains of the Horizon for hours, and the only other survivor they found was Dr. Mira Voss, a Scythian woman with silver hair and pale eyes who had been in the medical bay when the ship crashed, and she was hurt but alive. 3 survivors out of a crew of 22, and the rest were gone forever, lost to the storm and the mountain that had killed them. Sam looked at the wreckage and felt tears running down his face. Because these people had been his friends, his family for the past 3 years of space travel, and now they were nothing but memories. "We need to find shelter," Dr. Voss said, her voice calm despite everything. "The ship's structure is not safe, and the storm is still raging outside." Corax pointed toward a dark opening in the mountain, a cave that seemed to go deep into the rock, and they gathered what supplies they could carry and made their way toward it. The cave was large and dry, protected from the wind and rain, and Sam felt relief wash over him as they entered. But that relief quickly turned to shock when he saw what was inside. There, in the back of the cave, was a nest made of strange plants and shiny stones. And in that nest were 7 small creatures that looked like dragons from the old Earth stories, with wings and scales and long tails, and they were crying, making soft sounds that broke Sam's heart. Next in the nest lay a massive body, a dragon so large that Sam could not see all of it in the dim light. And it was not moving, and the wounds on its body told Sam everything he needed to know. "Poachers," Dr. Voss whispered, her silver eyes wide with recognition. "These are Velrathi drakes, one of the rarest species in the galaxy, hunted for their scales because they can conduct energy like nothing else in the known universe." "The mother is dead," Corax said, stating the obvious in his blunt way. "The babies will die too without her." Sam moved closer to the nest, and the 7 little dragons stopped crying and looked at him with huge golden eyes that seemed to glow in the darkness. And they did not run away or attack him. They just watched him with something that looked like hope. The smallest one, a dragon no bigger than a cat with scales that shimmered like moonlight, crawled toward Sam and made a tiny sound, almost like a question. Sam reached out his hand slowly, carefully, and the little dragon sniffed it and then pressed its head against his palm. And Sam felt warmth spread through his chest, a feeling he had not expected. "What are you doing?" Corax demanded. "We cannot take care of baby dragons. We can barely take care of ourselves." "Look at them," Sam said softly, not taking his eyes off the little creatures. "They are alone and scared and hungry, just like us. Deja Vos knelt beside Sam and examined the hatchlings with scientific interest, counting them and noting their colors and sizes, and her expression softened as one of them nibbled gently on her finger. "They are intelligent," she said. "Highly intelligent, possibly even sentient. And there are theories that the Volrathi drakes can understand language and emotion, though no one has ever been able to study them closely, because poachers kill them before scientists can reach them," Sam said, anger rising in his voice. "They killed the mother for her scales and left the babies to die." He stood up and walked to the supplies they had salvaged from the ship, and he found emergency rations, food packets designed to provide nutrition for any carbon-based life form, and he brought them back to the nest. The little dragons smelled the food and began chirping excitedly, and Sam opened the packets and watched them eat, their tiny mouths working quickly, their golden eyes shining with gratitude. "You are making a mistake," Corax warned. "When rescue comes, and it will come, we will have to leave this planet and everything on it, including these creatures." "Then I will deal with that when it happens," Sam replied. "But right now, they need help, and I am going to help them." The smallest dragon finished eating and crawled into Sam's lap, curling up against his stomach and making a soft humming sound. And Sam felt something change inside him, something deep and powerful. He did not know it then, but that moment would change everything, not just for him, not just for the dragons, but for the entire galaxy. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the cave, 7 baby dragons slept peacefully for the first time since their mother died. And Sam Carter sat among them, a human from a small blue planet called Earth, making a silent promise that he would not let any more harm come to them. Darvas watched him and smiled slightly, seeing something in Sam that she had read about in old books, something that humans were famous for throughout the galaxy, a stubborn and sometimes foolish tendency to care about things that others would ignore. Corax shook his head and went to sleep, convinced that Sam would regret this decision. But Sam did not sleep that night. He sat with the dragons and listened to the storm and thought about what had happened and what would happen next. And he knew that his life would never be the same again. Days passed slowly on Velra 7, and the 3 survivors fell into a routine of survival, gathering food and water, repairing what they could from the crashed ship, and waiting for rescue that did not come. The rescue beacon was working, sending its signal out into space, but the planet's strange atmosphere was blocking the transmission, making it weak and hard to detect, and every day that passed made hope feel a little more distant. But while Corax grew more frustrated and Dr. Voss grew more worried, Sam found a strange kind of peace in the cave with the dragons. He had given each of them a name, because he believed that every living thing deserved a name, something that made them special and individual. The largest of the hatchlings, a dragon with red and orange scales that looked like fire, he called Nova because she reminded him of a star being born. The fastest one, who could run and jump better than all the others, he named Ember because she moved like a spark flying through the air. The quiet one, who spent most of his time watching and thinking, Sam called Ash because his gray scales were the color of wood after it burns. The playful one, who was always getting into trouble and making the others chase her, became Flicker because she never stayed still for even a moment. The strong one, who helped Sam carry things and move rocks, he named Spark because there was power in his young body that Sam could already see. The curious one, who was always exploring new parts of the cave and bringing back strange objects, Sam called Comet because he was always moving towards something new. And the smallest one, the one who had first crawled into Sam's lap, who followed him everywhere and slept curled against his chest every night, Sam named Luna because her silver scales reminded him of Earth's moon. The dragons learned their names quickly, responding when Sam called them, and this amazed Dr. Voss, who spent hours watching and taking notes on her damaged datapad. "This is remarkable," she said one evening as they sat around a small fire. "They should not be able to understand language at this age. They should not be able to recognize individual sounds and connect them to themselves." "Maybe nobody gave them the chance before," Sam replied, scratching Luna behind her small wings as she made happy sounds. "Maybe all they needed was someone to talk to them like they matter." Corax made a noise of disgust and stood up from the fire, walking to the mouth of the cave to stare at the dark sky. "You are wasting time and resources on these creatures," he said, his voice hard and cold. "Every bit of food you give them is food that we need to survive." "There is enough food," Sam said calmly. "The rations will last for months, and I have been learning to find edible plants in the forest." "That is not the point." Corax turned to face Sam, his forearms crossed in anger. "The point is that you are becoming attached to them. You are treating them like they are your children. And when rescue comes, you will have to leave them behind." "I know," Sam said quietly, but his arms tightened around Luna. "Do you?" Corax stepped closer, his blue face dark with frustration. "Do you really understand what that means? These dragons cannot come with us. Galactic law forbids removing endangered species from their home planets. And even if the law allowed it, no ship would take them." Dior Voss stepped between the two of them, her silver hair catching the firelight. "Corax is right about the law," she said gently, looking at Sam with sympathy in her pale eyes. "And he is right that you are forming a bond with these creatures that will be painful to break." "Then let it be painful," Sam said. And his voice was firm now, not angry, but absolutely certain. "These dragons lost their mother. They were left alone to die. And I will not abandon them just because it might hurt me later." "This is foolish human emotion," Corax said, throwing his forearms up in frustration. "This is why humans are considered the most irrational species in the galaxy." "Maybe irrational is not always bad," Sam replied, meeting the alien's eyes without fear. "Maybe sometimes caring about things that do not benefit you is exactly what the universe needs." Corax stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head and walked away into the darkness of the cave. Dior sat down next to Sam and watched the dragons sleeping in their nest, all except Luna, who refused to leave Sam's side. "He's not wrong, you know," she said softly, "about the pain that is coming." "I know," Sam said again, "but you do not care." "I care very much." Sam looked at the sleeping dragons, at their gentle breathing and their beautiful scales and their tiny claws. "I care so much that it scares me. But caring about them does not mean I should stop. It means I should try harder." Dior was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and touched Luna's small head, and the baby dragon made a happy sound in her sleep. "I have studied hundreds of species across dozens of worlds," she said, "and I have never understood humans. Never understood why you do things that seem to have no logical purpose." "Like what?" Sam asked. "Like keeping pets that serve no function, like crying at stories that are not real. Like sacrificing your own comfort for strangers you will never see again." Dr. Voss looked at him with genuine confusion. "These behaviors make no sense from an evolutionary standpoint." Sam smiled and stroked Luna's wings gently. "Maybe that is what makes us human," he said. "Maybe our strength is not in being logical. Maybe it is in being illogical when logic would be cruel." Weeks turned into a month, and still no rescue came, and the dragons grew bigger and stronger and more attached to Sam every day. They followed him when he searched for food. They protected him when strange creatures came near the cave. They brought him gifts of shiny stones and colorful flowers that they found in the forest. And every night, all 7 of them slept around him in a circle, their warm bodies keeping him safe from the cold, their soft breathing creating a rhythm that helped him sleep. Sam knew that Corax was right, that this could not last forever. That rescue would come eventually, and he would have to make a choice that would break his heart. But for now, in this moment, in this cave on this strange planet, Sam Carter was not alone, and neither were the dragons. And sometimes, that is enough. The signal came on a morning that started like every other morning, with Sam waking up surrounded by warm dragon bodies and Luna's face pressed against his cheek. At first, he thought he was dreaming, because the sound of his ship's communication system was something he had almost forgotten. But then Dr. Voss was shaking his shoulder and shouting with excitement. "They found us," she cried, her pale eyes bright with tears. "A rescue ship has made contact. They are coming for us." Corax was already at the emergency beacon, talking rapidly into the communicator, and Sam could hear a woman's voice on the other end, clear and strong and professional. "This is Captain Claire Bishop of the Starlight Wanderer," the voice said. "We received your distress signal, and we are entering orbit now. Please confirm your status and number of survivors." "3 survivors," Corax replied quickly. "We need immediate extraction." Sam stood up slowly, and the dragons sensed something was wrong because they all stopped playing and looked at him with their big golden eyes. Luna pressed against his leg and made a questioning sound, and Sam reached down to touch her head, feeling his heart crack just a little bit. Within an hour, the rescue shuttle landed on the mountainside near the cave, and Captain Claire Bishop stepped out with 2 crew members, looking around at the strange planet with sharp, intelligent eyes. She was a tall woman with short black hair and a face that showed she had seen many hard things in her life. And when she looked at Sam and the others, she nodded once with satisfaction. "Good to see you alive," she said, her voice neither warm nor cold, just practical. "We detected the crash signature from the horizon. We assumed there would be no survivors." "We were lucky," Dr. Voss said. "The cave protected us from the worst of the elements." Then, Captain Bishop saw the dragons. They had followed Sam out of the cave, all 7 of them, and they stood behind him in a protective group, watching the newcomers with suspicion. "What in the name of space are those?" one of the crew members asked, reaching for his weapon. "Do not touch that gun," Sam said sharply, stepping between the crew and the dragons. "They are Velrathi drakes. They are harmless, and they are under my protection." Captain Bishop raised her hand to stop her crew member, and she studied the dragons with a calculating expression. "Velrathi drakes," she repeated. "I thought they were extinct." "Almost extinct," Dr. Voss explained. "These are hatchlings. Their mother was killed by poachers, and Sam has been caring for them since we crashed." Captain Bishop looked at Sam with new interest. Then she shook her head slowly. "I understand the situation is complicated," she said, "but we need to leave immediately. This planet's core is unstable, and the Galactic Council has scheduled a quarantine starting in 6 hours." "What does that mean?" Sam asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. "It means no ships will be allowed to enter or leave this system for at least 15 standard years," Captain Bishop replied. "The radiation from the core makes it too dangerous for regular travel." "And the dragons?" Sam asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Can I come with us?" Captain Bishop said, and there was something like sympathy in her eyes. "Galactic lore is clear. Endangered species cannot be removed from their home planets, and even if I wanted to break that law, my ship does not have the facilities to transport them safely." Sam felt the world spinning around him, felt his heart pounding so hard that he thought it might burst. Dr. Voss put her hand on his arm gently. "Sam," she said softly, "I am sorry, but we have to go." Corax was already walking toward the shuttle, not looking back, and Sam understood because Corax had never pretended to care about the dragons. Dr. Voss squeezed Sam's arm once more. Then she followed Corax, her silver hair blowing in the wind. Sam turned to look at the dragons, at Nova and Ember and Ash and Flicker and Spark and Comet and Luna, at these 7 small creatures who had become his family over the past month. They looked back at him with those golden eyes, And Sam could see that they understood something was happening, something bad and scary. Luna crawled closer and pressed her whole body against his leg, making a sound he had never heard before, a sound of fear and sadness and desperate hope. The other dragons joined her, surrounding Sam, touching him with their wings and noses and small claws. And then something impossible happened. Nova, the largest of the dragons, opened her mouth and made a sound that was not a chirp or a growl, but something else, something that sounded almost like words. "Please," Nova said, the word rough and broken but unmistakable. "Please." The other dragons joined in, their voices mixing together in a chorus of desperation. "Please," they cried. "Please don't leave us. Please don't leave us." Sam fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face, and the dragons pressed against him from all sides, their warm bodies trembling with fear. "I won't," he whispered, and then he said it louder. "I won't leave you." Captain Bishop stared at him with wide eyes. "Did those dragons just speak?" she asked. Sam stood up slowly, Luna cradled in his arms, and he looked at the captain with calm certainty. "I am not getting on that shuttle," he said. "Are you insane?" Captain Bishop demanded. "You will be trapped on this planet for 15 years, maybe longer." "I know." "You will have no supplies, no medical care, no communication with the outside world." "I know." "You might die." "I might," Sam agreed, "but I will not leave them." Captain Bishop looked at him for a long moment, and something changed in her expression. Something that might have been respect or might have been sadness. "You have 1 hour to gather supplies from the shuttle," she said finally. "I will give you everything we can spare." Dr. Voss ran back to Sam and grabbed his hands. "You cannot do this," she said, tears in her eyes. "This is suicide." "No," Sam said gently. "This is living. This is choosing to be human even when it is hard, even when it hurts." He hugged Dr. Voss goodbye, then watched as she and Corax boarded the shuttle. Captain Bishop was the last to leave, and she stood at the door for a moment, looking at Sam surrounded by dragons. "You are either the bravest man I have ever met," she said, "or the most foolish." "Maybe both," Sam replied with a small smile. The shuttle doors closed, the engines roared to life, and the Starlight Wanderer rose into the sky and disappeared. Sam stood on the mountainside with 7 dragons pressed against him, watching until the ship was gone, and then he turned back toward the cave. "Well," he said to his new family, "it looks like we have a lot of work to do." And Luna made a sound that might have been a laugh. The first year was the hardest year, and Sam thought many times that Corax had been right, that he had been foolish and irrational, and that he would die alone on this strange planet. The supplies from the shuttle lasted 3 months, and after that Sam had to learn everything about survival from nothing. He taught himself to hunt the small animals that lived in the forest, though he was not very good at it and went hungry many nights. He learned which plants were safe to eat and which ones would make him sick, sometimes by making painful mistakes that left him weak and trembling. He built better shelters, first from the wreckage of the horizon, and later from wood and stone and the strange, strong fibers of local plants. The storms were terrible, lightning that turned the sky white and wind that howled like angry ghosts. And Sam would huddle in the cave with the dragons wrapped around him, keeping each other safe and warm. But the dragons helped him in ways he had not expected. As they grew larger, they became better hunters, bringing back food for Sam when he was too tired or too sick to find it himself. Nova would stand guard at the cave entrance all night, watching for predators with her fierce golden eyes. Ember taught herself to fish in the rivers, and she would bring back enough to feed everyone. Spark helped Sam build stronger walls and better tools, understanding somehow what Sam wanted to create and using his growing strength to make it happen. By the end of the first year, Sam had lost weight and gained scars, and his hair had started to turn gray at the edges. But he was alive, and so were all 7 dragons. The second year was easier, because now Sam knew the land and the seasons and the dangers. And the dragons were no longer babies, but growing creatures with personalities and abilities of their own. Sam began to teach them. He sat by the fire every night and told them stories. Stories about Earth and humanity, about history and science and art and music. And the dragons listened with complete attention. At first he was not sure how much they understood, but then Ash started asking questions, using the broken speech that Nova had discovered. And Sam realized that they were learning everything. "Why do humans make pictures?" Ash asked one night, looking at a drawing Sam had made in the dirt. "Because pictures help us remember things," Sam explained. "And because making beautiful things makes us happy." "Why does beautiful make happy?" Ash asked. Sam thought about this for a long time. "I do not know," he admitted. "Maybe it is just part of being alive. Maybe all living things need beauty like they need food and water." Ash tilted his gray head and seemed to think about this, and Sam could see thoughts moving behind those golden eyes. By the 5th year, the dragons were fully grown and magnificent. Nova was the largest, her scales burning red and orange, and when she spread her wings she could block out the sun. Ember was sleek and fast, her dark scales shimmering like fire underwater, and she could fly faster than Sam could see. Ash had become the philosopher of the group, spending hours thinking and asking questions that sometimes made Sam question everything he knew. Flicker remained playful even as an adult, always finding ways to make the others laugh with her tricks and games. Spark was the builder, helping Sam construct a real home with multiple rooms and a roof that kept out the rain. Comet was the explorer, flying farther and farther each day and bringing back news of what he found. Other caves and forests and mountains and even, eventually, other dragons. And Luna, the smallest, remained closest to Sam, sleeping beside him every night, never straying far from his side. "Father," she called him, and the others followed, and Sam cried the first time he heard them say it. The years passed, and Sam grew older, his hair turning completely gray, his body moving slower and aching more, but his heart was full in a way it had never been before. He taught the dragons mathematics, drawing numbers in the sand and explaining how they worked. He taught them the names of the stars, pointing at the night sky and telling them which ones had planets where people lived. He taught them about kindness and fairness, about why it was important to help others, even when it was difficult. And they taught him things too. They taught him their language, the chirps and songs that carried meaning between dragons. They taught him how to feel the weather before it came, how to sense the planet's moods. They taught him that love did not need words, that sometimes just being present was enough. In the 10th year, Comet found a group of wild dragons living in a valley far from the cave, and he brought one back to meet the family. Her name was something Sam could not pronounce, so he called her Star, and she was shy at first but curious about this strange creature who had raised 7 dragons. Within 2 years, Nova and Ember and the others had mates, and the cave became too small, so they spread out across the mountains, but they always came back to visit Sam. By the 15th year, there were dozens of dragons in the region, and Sam had become something of a legend among them. Young dragons who had never met him knew stories about the human who had saved the first 7, who had stayed when everyone else left, who had taught the dragons to speak and think and dream. Sam was old now, his body tired and his bones aching. But when he sat on the cliff outside his home and watched the dragons flying in the sunset, their scales catching the light like living jewels, he felt no regret. He had made the right choice all those years ago. He had chosen love over safety and family over logic. And the result was this: a species saved from extinction, a community built from nothing, a life that mattered. Luna sat beside him every evening, her massive head resting gently on his lap, the way it had when she was small enough to fit in his arms. "Are you happy, Father?" she asked one night. Sam looked at the dragon soaring through the sky, at the stars that held worlds he would never see again, at the daughter who had never come from his body but had grown from his heart. "I am the happiest man who ever lived," he said. And it was true. The quarantine ended on a day that Sam had stopped counting years ago, because time had become something different for him, measured not in calendar dates, but in dragon births and seasons and the slow rhythm of life on Vera 7. He was sitting on his favorite cliff, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that Earth had never known, when Luna raised her head and looked toward the stars. "Something is coming," she said, a voice deeper and wiser than it had been 15 years ago. "Something from beyond the sky." Sam squinted at the darkening heavens, and then he saw it too. A light that moved differently from the stars, a light that was getting bigger. "A ship," he whispered, and he felt something strange in his chest, something he had not felt in so long that he almost did not recognize it. A mixture of hope and fear and excitement. The ship descended slowly, carefully, and Sam could see now that it was a scientific vessel, sleek and white and covered in sensors and equipment. Dragons began to gather on the cliffs around him, called by some instinct they all shared, and by the time the ship landed there were nearly 50 of them watching. The door opened, and a figure stepped out, a woman with silver hair and pale eyes that Sam would have known anywhere. "Dr. Voss," he called out, his old voice cracking with emotion. She stood frozen for a moment, staring at him, at the dragons, at everything around her, with eyes that could not believe what they were seeing. Then she ran to him, and Sam walked down to meet her, and they embraced like old friends who had never expected to see each other again. "You are alive," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "All these years I hoped, but I never knew for certain." "I am alive," Sam agreed, laughing and crying at the same time. "And so are they." Vos pulled back and looked at the dragons assembled on the cliffs, and her scientific mind was already working, already counting and categorizing and marveling. "There were only 7, she said in wonder. "And now there are so many." 53 at last count, Sam said proudly, with more babies expected in the spring. More people were coming out of the ship now, scientists and researchers who had traveled across the galaxy to see what remained of the Vorathi drakes. They stopped and stared in amazement at the dragons, at Sam, at the impossible scene before them. And then Nova landed in front of the group, her massive body blocking the path, her wings spread wide and her golden eyes fierce. The scientists scrambled backward in fear, but Sam walked forward and put his hand on Nova's leg. "They are friends," he said to her. "They will not hurt us." Nova looked at her father, then at the strangers, and slowly she folded her wings and sat down. "You speak for them," she said in clear galactic common. "Then they are welcome." Diorvas nearly fainted. "She speaks," one of the scientists gasped. "The dragon actually speaks." "They all speak," Sam said with a proud smile. "They learn from me, and now they teach their children, and one day they will be as intelligent as any species in the galaxy." What followed was the most remarkable day of Sam Carter's life. Diorvas and her team spent hours talking to the dragons, recording their language, studying their culture, documenting everything they saw. The dragons were cautious at first, but Sam's trust was enough for them, and soon they were showing the scientists their homes and their families and their art. Because yes, the dragons made art. Ash had taught them to paint with the colorful mud from the riverbanks, and there were murals on the cave walls that told the story of the 7 babies and the human who stayed. Flicker showed them the games the young dragons played, complicated flying patterns that were part dance and part sport. Spark demonstrated the structures he had designed, buildings that used the natural shape of the mountains and the strength of dragon fire to create something new. And Luna stayed beside Sam through all of it, introducing each dragon to him personally, making sure everyone knew that this old gray-haired human was the most important person on the planet. When the sun set, they all gathered around a great fire, dragons and humans together, and Dr. Voss asked Sam to tell his story. He spoke for hours, from the crash to the cave, from the first feeding to the tearful goodbye, from the hard years of survival to the joy of watching his family grow. The scientist recorded every word. This is the most important discovery in xenobiology history, Dr. Voss said when he finished, not just because you saved a species, but because you proved something that many of us had forgotten. What is that? Sam asked. That intelligence and compassion are not weaknesses, she replied. That sometimes the most irrational choice is the right one. That love can build things that logic never could. The news of Sam Carter spread across the galaxy like fire across dry grass. Every news network told his story, showing images of the dragons, playing recordings of Nova and Luna speaking, describing the miracle that one human had created. Some called him a hero, and some called him a fool, but no one could deny what he had accomplished. Ships began to arrive from everywhere. Scientists and tourists and diplomats and curious people who wanted to see the dragons and meet the human who had raised them. The Galactic Council declared Velra 7 a protected sanctuary, and the dragons were given full rights as a sentient species, something that had never happened so quickly in the history of the galaxy. Sam lived another 12 years after the quarantine ended, growing older and weaker, but never losing his smile. He had visitors every day, dragons who wanted to hear his stories, scientists who wanted to ask questions, children from other worlds who wanted to meet the famous Dragon Father. And when he finally died, peacefully in his sleep with Luna's head resting on his chest, the dragons mourned for 7 days. They built him a monument on the highest peak, a statue carved from crystal that caught the light and scattered it in rainbow patterns across the mountains. Ships passing through the system still stop to see it, and pilots tell their passengers the story of the human who was asked to leave and chose to stay. The inscription reads, "Here rests Sam Carter, who stayed when everyone else left, who loved when logic said not to, who proved that humanity's greatest strength is not intelligence or power, but the simple stubborn refusal to abandon those who need us." And below that, in the beautiful flowing script of the Volrathi Drakes, are the words, "Our Father, our Savior, our Human." And if you listen carefully on quiet nights, they say you can still hear the dragons singing his name to the stars.